and welcome to our character profile of David Barlow, which has been taken from Conversation Street episode 103.
Ages ago. 2 years into the podcast.
So long ago that this was like, how long was it? 20 minutes? Not very long.
No,
David
about
Barlow
10 minutes.
wasn't around for very long, so...
No, he met an unfortunate end.
Yeah.
Down under. That makes it sound like he had some
like
kind
a
of
waxing
STD.
incident.
David Barlow, football legend, Weatherfield County's finest. Forget James Bailey, forget Warren Baldwin, even forget Tommy O, because David Barlow was where it's at.
He was the original and best. He was the Bisto of Coronation Street footballers.
He was. And the reason that we're talking about him this week and why we've re-uploaded his character profile onto YouTube is obviously because of all the footballing shenanigans that are going on Coronation Street at the moment.
Being a footballer has never been an easy job on Coronation Street, and David Barlow proved that by dying.
Not during football.
No, but he had a sad end.
He did, and he also had to stop doing football because of an accident.
Whoops. Enjoy this character profile of Ken Barlow's younger brother, and
also forgive us if we sound like we don't really know what we're talking about, because we didn't back then. We know more about it now. We'll talk about that after it's played. So stick around to the end and we'll tell you what we think now. It's classic character profile time, and this week's a good one. It's not linked to anything something that's happened in the episodes this week. It is linked to a current world event of the World Cup. Apparently there is football going on at the moment. I think that the general English attitude is now that we've out of the World Cup.
Do you know anything about the English people's attitude to football?
I've never.
Do not pretend you know anything about football.
I don't know anything about the football.
Well, just because no one's talking about it to you. Doesn't mean that people aren't interested in football. Well,
this week's character is a footballer. It was David Barlow, which is Ken Barlow's brother.
Ken Barlow's brother?
Never talks about him, of course, a forgotten character. And it's his birthday today. It would have been his birthday today anyway. He was killed in a car crash in the end. But he would have been 72 today because he was born on the 4th of July, 1942.
Before America was invented.
Yeah, and he died on the 8th of April 1970. Like Ken, his parents are Frank and Ida Barlow,
I knew that.
and he married Irma Ogden in 1965.
Oh my goodness.
I always think it's funny to imagine the Barlows and the Ogdens like joining together by marriage, because they seem to be at complete odds with each other, so it's completely opposite types of families. They had a son, Darren, in 1968. That was an off-screen son, and David first appeared in the first episode of Coronation Street on the 9th of December 1960. His final episode was the 10th of April 1968, and all in all he was in 252 episodes. He was played by Alan Rothwell.
Wow.
Not Michael Rodwell.
No, that's a completely different person. Ken was supposed to have a sister originally, but they decided not to because they already had a brother and sister relationship with Dennis Tanner and Linda Chevesky or something.
I thought that was quite interesting.
What a weird idea. Like, oh no, we can't have two siblings.
Well, because the cast was so small back then, I guess they didn't want to have any chance of like overlapping ideas, and they just wanted to get in as much as possible. So I thought that was quite interesting that they originally going to have Ken with a sister. Yeah. So let's have a look at...
She might still be alive.
Who?
If he had a sister.
Oh, yeah, maybe. Wouldn't have married Irma Ogden anyway,
No,
I'll tell you that.
Not in those days.
So he grew up during the war, so he was obviously born... when did you say he was born? 1942, yeah, so he was born in the war. And then grew up with his brother Ken. And
is he older or younger?
David is... I think he's the younger brother. And he lived with Ida at number 3 whilst their dad was fighting in the war. By 1961, when Corrie started, he was an apprentice engineer, but he was much more interested in football, so he signed up to Weatherfield County FC. He became one of their best players and then was signed to a London club.
A London club?
Yeah.
What, in that fancy London?
In the world. Yeah.
Whoa.
I wonder whether they had anything with David reacting when in 1966 when England won the World Cup. See, that I know current events.
Yeah, current events. In 1963, he returned to Weatherfield for a week, but all the locals were jealous about how well off he was. So he went back home to London.
I think he was like on again, off again
Don't
for quite
bother
a bit in those early
coming
days.
from London to Coronation Street because they just hate you.
He went back again at Christmas 1964, but that was because he'd been suspended from his club for accepting a bribe, and he didn't tell Ken and Val that. 1965 was a much bigger year for David, so he was back on the pitch by February, but he had an accident and tore a ligament in April, and then had to stay with the Barlows to recover.
Aww.
Yeah, he started seeing Irma Ogden that year, who he proposed to during a trip to the Blue John Mines. And
where's that?
That is in Derbyshire. And,
really?
Yeah, and it is where...
What do they mine in the Blue John Mines?
You ask... Don't pretend you're not reading my notes. They mine fluorite
and
there.
What is that?
Well, fluorite is...
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't written the notes of that. But that's what they do at the Blue John Mines. They're having a little
All day long.
little episode filmed over there. But interesting trivia about that.
What?
Roy Barraclough was one of the tour guides during that mine episode.
Was it the actual character of him?
It wasn't Alec Gilroy. No, he was like 3 or 4 characters before it was Alec Gilroy.
Okay.
So anyway, later that year he retired from football and he became a coach for Weatherfield Athletics and wrote a football column for the Weatherfield Advisor.
Oh, see, literacy is in the blood.
Yeah.
Irma's father Stan hit her when he found out that David was in her bedroom.
I think this is a forgotten part of Stan Ogden's history, that he hit his daughter. Because
it's okay.
He kind of grew up to be like lovable, oafish husband, didn't he? Not a child beater.
It's okay to beat your daughter if she's having it off with an ex-footballer in your house. They tried to get married quietly without their families knowing, but they found out about it anyway and they turned up to the reception.
Later on in the year, David was injured during a charity football match and he was told that he will never play football again. And that's temporarily led to a split between David and Irma because he was...
That's what happened to Gordon Ramsay.
What?
He used to be a professional football player.
Did he?
Did you not know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, and David was too proud to live on Coronation Street after that because she said that she wanted... Okay, so he's not got football anymore, but they should buy the corner shop together. And he was like, no, I'm not a shopkeeper.
I'm too good to live on Coronation Street and work at the corner shop.
Yeah, but
I'm a Barlow.
He was taught around in the end by Ken's wife, Val. But actually, Irma didn't stay at the shop long. In 1966, she left there to work in the PVC factory across the road, and David had to put up with Hilda working in the shop with him. And that must have been a bit awkward, having the mother-in-law working with you at your shop, a job that you didn't even want to do, especially if your mother-in-law's Hilda.
Sounds excellent. Irma came back though, that was okay.
Yeah.
In 1967, he briefly considered standing for council elections, but then he decided against the idea because Irma didn't want him to. Mm-hmm. That's the best way for marital bliss.
David turned hero later in the year when he rescued Ina Sharples when the train crashed through the viaduct, and then even later than that, Irma got pregnant, but she had a miscarriage.
Oh no! But David looked into adoption. Hooray! And they fostered a child at Christmas for a few days. Oh, so sweet.
Yeah, it's like the early Rita and Len.
In 1968, David tired of shop work and he tried to return to football, and he got offered a position on a team in Australia, and even though Irma didn't want to, they obviously have really rubbish footballers in Australia that just a random
the scouts
injured
go
player.
Right across the world to try and find anyone.
Irma didn't want to go, but they emigrated anyway, and while they were there, Irma gave birth to a son called Darren.
Yeah, but sadly in 1970 we find that David and Darren had been killed in a car crash there. Tragic.
Sad.
Irma was also involved in the crash, but she survived and returned to Weatherfield. Irma was the character, I think, that... do you remember when we watched the programme and they had the actress there saying that she just left, she upped and left and didn't turn up to work one day? That was Irma Ogden, I think. So she was back in it for a little bit after 1970, but not for long. Producers had wanted to bring David back after he'd left, but Alan had already found other work, so he's like, no, don't need you Coronation Street anymore, so he was killed off screen.
I think that's sad because I would really like to have Ken have a brother now.
Yeah, I can only imagine how different Ken's life would be if he'd had a brother, like somebody to confide in all these years, with all the problems that he'd been through.
Because Ken's really the rock, isn't he, of the show?
Yeah. But sometimes he needs somebody
having anyone to lean on.
No.
Maybe you wouldn't have had an affair.
Yeah, I don't know how close Ken and David were, not knowing about anything more about the character of David than what we've just said. But yeah, like during the Ken and Mike affair. I mean, not Ken and Mike affair, the Deirdre and Mike affair, and Ken's suicide bid.
I can't imagine not knowing anything about their interactions. I cannot imagine them being close at all, considering how sporty David obviously was and how studious Ken.
Yeah, that's true. It seems like it was a bit like Steve and Andy, like the cool one and the bookish one.
I can imagine they were set up deliberately to be complete pole opposites from each other.
Possibly. But I think both of them ended up marrying someone that wasn't necessarily suited to them. I think Irma was a bit too outrageous for David, and Val wasn't particularly suited to Ken, I think, because he was a bit too boring for her as well. But anyway, Alan went on to appear in Brookside, Emmerdale and Doctors, so he's still got his still trying to get those soap awards. He was also in Casualty and Heartbeat and a few other things. So I don't know.
Was he not in the bill?
He was probably in the bill as well.
I should hope so.
I don't know the actor particularly, but yeah, good to see that there is life after Coronation Street for these people.
Not really.
Well, it's not good to see there's life. Are you saying there isn't life?
No, there isn't life after Corrie.
Well, I don't think you ever. It's difficult. I don't think it's easy to reach the same heights, is it, once you leave?
No.
But yeah, there we go. There's David. That's our footballing spot in tribute to the World Cup.
Your tribute to the World Cup.
Yeah, we could have also have done Warren Baldwin, who played for Weatherfield FC, but there's nothing about him on Corriepedia.
Oh well, sad. Well done. You tried your best.
I tried. I did have a look, but no. David Barlow, I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Lots of characters that people don't really know about, because I bet there's a lot of our listeners that probably didn't even know that Ken had a brother. You didn't know.
No.
And there you have it, David Barlow, everybody.
And the World Cup. Michael's thoughts about the World Cup.
Yes, I mean, nobody's talked to me about the World Cup since that time, so I don't really know. Anyway.
What was that confusing summer where people kept talking to you about waistcoats?
Oh, yes, I do remember that. That's happened in the interim years, hasn't it? So it was quite funny. We've just been watching the DVD episodes, and they talk a bit about the 1966 World Cup, haven't they? Because we've been through 1966, although they obviously didn't talk about anything about England winning.
Well, then we don't know because we didn't see all the episodes.
No, indeed. But we have seen episodes now with David Barlow in, and have had the opportunity to form a more rounded opinion on this character.
So what's your rounded opinion on David Barlow?
I quite like him, actually.
Me too. I think almost every single character that was around in the 60s, I'll say the same thing. Like, quite like them. They're a quite decent person.
You're right. There's a couple of exceptions. So a couple of Esterhazers and
like who I've forgotten already.
Yeah.
But other than that, everyone was pretty fun in their own way. And I think that David, we spoke a bit about his marriage to Irma.
Yeah, well, that's what's really got the character, turn him into a great
Barlow, for me. Yeah, it's one of my favourite characters.
I was going to say before, like in the first, 1960, maybe 1961-ish, David Barlow was a bit of a character for me. We didn't get to see much of him. He didn't feature very heavily on the episodes of the DVDs that we watched from then. But in the now we're into the second half of the 60s, the character's really come into his own. I think he went away for a bit and then he's come back. And the relationship with Irma Barlow, I've really been enjoying. I think that they're a great couple. I know, it's such a shame how it ended, but I know. What can you do? And I suppose Irma as well is another one that when we profiled her, we were kind of just reading what Corriepedia said. But I love both of them. Yeah. I really, really do. And their romance has been really sweet. All the stuff at the Blue John Mines. We got to see the Blue John Mine proposal, and that was really nice. He's just a really decent, smiley bloke, isn't he? He's not got any malice, at least in the episodes that we've seen. He's just a straight-up guy. And it's just so funny how much the extended Barlow family featured in the early days, because you think, Ken was there right from the beginning, and then he had a couple of hangers on for a little bit. But actually, we're in 1967, and David Barlow is still very, very relevant, and Frank Barlow, Ken's dad, was for the first few years as well. Yeah. I've been really enjoying seeing the Barlow clan, and then they're more than just a picture for me. So David Barlow, awesome character, I would say. Big tick. I thought you were going to say big. Something else. Well, when you have to leave football because of injuries, you fall back on something else. I was going to say get out of exercise. Okay, all right. Then the moobs appeared. Oh. Anyway, that's David Barlow. I hope you enjoy listening and learning about him. If you can get hold of some of the old episodes or go and have a look on YouTube, then do, because I would say he's quite a forgotten character. He's no Hilda Ogden, he's no Lem Fairclough, even Leonard Swinley, but actually as a minor character, he's a really decent bloke.
Yeah.
Someone who you'd be happy to go down the Rovers and share a pint with.
No, you wouldn't.
Someone who I'd be happy to go down to corner shop and buy a can of Spam from.
No, you wouldn't. When's the last time you bought a can of Spam?
I'm talking about the 60s here. I'd be living on Spam if I lived in the 60s.
You probably would do, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You'd probably have your sister around to clean up for you, and everyone would think that was totally normal and fine.
And when the whole country gets put on lockdown with the coronavirus, we'll be back on Spam again. Stock up now.
No.
Right. Thank you everybody for listening. See you.
No,
I'm not going to see you at all. You're not going to see me. This is a podcast. I'm still getting the hang of this.
No, I can see you.
Thanks for listening.
Put your trousers on.